Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webcast. My name's Andrew Barber, and I'm a senior contributing editor here at eSchool News. And I'm delighted that you could join us for today's presentation, which is sponsored by DreamBox Learning. Now, as many of you are no doubt aware, students tend to perform better in mathematics when their teachers have a really deep understanding of the math concepts they're teaching. So over the next hour, we're going to take a look at some of the innovative, personalized approaches to professional development that are designed to empower math teachers and in turn help their students learn better. Now, before I hand things over to our speakers for today, I want to just take a few moments to highlight a couple of items. First, we will be recording today's presentation, and in a couple of days, we'll send out an email to everyone who is in the audience that contains a link to the recorded event. And you'll also be able to download a PDF of the slides from that same email. And second, please ask questions. Don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any point during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. And we'll definitely have some time at the end for our speakers to address your questions. We also have a chat function, which you can see if you look down at the bottom of your screen. There's a blue icon down there, which is the group chat icon. Use chat to have discussions with fellow audience members or to contact me or the eSchool News team if you have any technical issues or other problems. However, I do have one favor to ask of you. Please don't use the chat to ask our panelists questions. They're simply not going to have time to monitor the chat. So if you have a question for them, please use the Q&A panel instead. And with that out of the way, let me introduce you to today's main speaker. Stefani Kauppila is the Adult Learning Design Manager at DreamBox Learning. And she's an experienced classroom educator who's worked in elementary and middle schools in Washington State before joining the DreamBox Learning curriculum design team in 2014. And after designing and developing student curriculum in her DreamBox career, she currently focuses on adult learning content and professional development. And later in the presentation, we'll also be hearing from Jenny Lee, who is Marketing Manager at DreamBox Learning. And together, Stephanie and Jenny will answer any questions that you may have. Welcome, Stephanie and Jenny. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here. So hello, my name is Stefani Kauppila, and I am the Manager of Adult Learning Design at DreamBox Learning. As Andrew stated, I am a former classroom teacher in both the elementary and middle school settings, so I've experienced PD through that teacher lens, trust me. I've sat through many professional development sessions in school libraries or cafeterias where groups of teachers are following click-through document instructions to quote-unquote learn new programs. I've listened to district-level coaches simply read through lesson plans directly from the curriculum. I've sat in large auditoriums where the speakers specialize in one subject and lose half of the audience from the get-go, so people turn on their phones during the entire session. But I've also participated in transformative professional development experiences as well. I attended Lucy Calkin's Teacher College Summer Reading Institute in New York City, which taught me how to finally read as an adult. I've listened to Stephanie Harvey discuss the role of passion and wonder in education. I've also had the pleasure of collaborating in curriculum with Dr. Kathy Fosno through our partnership here at DreamBox. And a common thread between all of the experiences that made some of those professional development experiences beneficial and transformative for me, while others fell flat, was that the specific considerations and intentionally designed experience that created the audience that it drew. We'll discuss the elements that make PD beneficial today. But first, I'd like to take 30 seconds for you to reflect on your own PD experiences. So think about sessions that you felt fell short. Think about those experiences that you found beneficial. And please feel free to share them in that chat box, whether they're good or bad, or simply keep them in mind as we proceed throughout our presentation today. So I'm going to give us 30 seconds to reflect and think on those, and hopefully we'll have one or two to share out. All right. So I'm not seeing much come through in the group chat. So as we move forward, if you think of anything or want to share, please feel free to throw them in there. So in today's session, we'll discuss a snapshot of the current professional development landscape. We'll discover the elements of professional development that entice engagement and deeper learning opportunities. We'll discuss how to design highly effective PD, and I'll share some resources that our PD team uses that we'd recommend for professionals seeking learning opportunities in delivering engaging PD. So first, let's look at the current professional development landscape. We know that teachers are the key to student success. The question is, are we giving our educators the support they need to be successful? When we look at the numbers, many teachers are generalists and may not feel as confident in their knowledge of content outside of their grade level and the learning pathways that students are required to become proficient across all grade levels. So in this case, we're looking specifically at data surrounding math specializations, and 8% of K-5 teachers are specialists while the other 92% are generalists, and that's 31% for 6th through 8th grade as well. And according to research and surveys conducted by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Learning Forward organization, only 29% of teachers are highly satisfied with their professional development. That seems like a big miss for us. Large majorities of teachers don't believe that PD is helping them prepare for the changing nature of their jobs, which includes using technology and digital learning tools, analyzing student data to differentiate instruction, and implementing changing standards. These teachers find PD largely irrelevant and ineffective. There is good news. Administrators want to support professional development, and they spend a lot of money each year trying to find the best professional development for their teachers. But the bad news is that achievement scores for student learning don't reflect the amount of time and money spent on teacher development each year. So where is the disconnect? According to the Gates Foundation research, it's a problem of execution. So teachers are not highly satisfied in many aspects of professional development, whereas administrators believe that they're strongly supporting all teachers in all of these areas. So some of these disconnected misconceptions come from the fact that some teachers are receiving more PD than others. So in the case of coaching, for example, most new teachers or first-year teachers receive a sufficient amount of coaching, whereas others do not get any coaching at all. Other teachers report that many PD experiences are isolated to one single event, and they're not even relevant to their own teaching and learning experiences. So what is it administrators want in PD? Administrators report that their high-level goals are to increase teacher capacity, increase student growth, and support professional learning for their educators, which makes sense. While these goals do support teachers at a high level and are well-intentioned, they're vague, and this opens professional learning for teachers to a broader spectrum of possible PD experiences, and therefore a margin for failure. So what is it that teachers want from PD? Teachers do agree with the administrator's goals, but their focus is on having decision-making capabilities over their own learning, to gauge the effectiveness of the professional learning, and to gain more support for job-embedded professional development. These aspects give relevance to the PD and make learning more tangible for our teachers. All right, before we continue, let's stop and define professional development so that we're all on the same page as we continue to discuss effective PD practices. So the Learning Policy Institute defines effective PD as structured professional learning that results in changes in teacher practices and improvements in student learning outcomes. So when you begin the process of designing professional development, the goals are to change teacher practices and to improve student learning outcomes. So as we move forward, we're going to look at the key elements to effective professional development and see what those are to meet those goals. Any questions so far, Jenny? Great. All right, so these are the key principles of effective professional development as researched by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Learning Policy Institute. So the first principle is that the session is content-focused. So when you're designing professional development, you need to decide on the content that you would like teachers to understand, grapple with, learn, and then focus on that throughout the session. Don't birdwalk, don't get sidetracked, and don't plan to pack too much into one session. Break the learning down into small, manageable chunks. The next one is relevance to each person in the room. Ask yourself, are all of these educators able to implement this learning into their classroom tomorrow morning, or next week, or as soon as possible, right? If you're providing content-specific PD that only applies to a percentage of the staff, allow other staff members to work on their own PD. Treat them as professionals. Being strategic and intentional with who should join the PD shows teachers that you view them as professionals in their own right, and sends the message that you understand personalizing their professional development experience as well. Okay, so the PD itself must also incorporate active learning opportunities throughout the presentation in order for the educators to engage, to try those new strategies or techniques, to make a plan, or to consider changing their practice in general. Your PD must support collaboration. Give opportunities for strategic collaboration during the session, and then provide a vision for future collaboration for ongoing development as well. And as we go into our next piece, I'll show you how we do that at DreamBox Learning. Professional development that's effective also models effective practice. So instead of being totally theoretical in your PD, we probably all sat through professional development that is extremely theoretical. The experience really does need to be hands-on for teachers, and it needs to be practical to reflect what will happen with the students in their classrooms. The next principle is offering feedback and time for reflection. So be ready to provide input for teachers when they're trying new activities and strategies in the PD session, but also allow for questions and time for feedback during future meetings and future sessions, and let them know that this isn't an isolated event where they're working alone in a silo. It must also, again, have that sustained duration. Let them know that it's not just this one event. Treat teachers as professionals, and really think deeply about your delivery method and what types of groupings you'd like. And I'll discuss that more when we get into how DreamBox designs intentionally for our professional development. Great. All right, so when defining our PD design principles at DreamBox, I'm going to give you an example of what it is we do, so I can give you a model by which that you can start thinking about designing your own professional development. So we not only took into consideration the key principles of effective PD, just like we saw, but we also decided that we need to measure the effectiveness of these experiences in the form of a rubric. And I'll present that to you next. In this way, we cover the design principles, and we also have a way to gauge the outcome of what we've created. It's also important to note that DreamBox delivers professional development in several ways. We deliver it through webinars, through on-site opportunities that are face-to-face with educators, and through our MyFlex PD offering that's in our dashboard within our product. That one is more of a module model that is self-paced for teachers. So when designing professional learning and defining our principles, we had to define each part of the session that made up a DreamBox Learning professional development session. These parts are outlined in the left-hand column as we go. Here you see it starting as introduction. We also needed to define how we would assess effectiveness according to the expectations that we set on the team when designing our PD experiences. And that's reflected in each of these descriptions as you read left to right. There are two columns of greatest interest to our team on this rubric. You would think it's performance expectations, but it's not. One of the columns that is of great interest is the exceeding expectations column, and the other is the not applicable column. So in order for our PD specialists to design and create effective professional development, they not only needed to know the performance expectations, but we love to be stretched to think about the exceeding expectations performance indicators as well. So we often discuss the 5-star experience as being that expected experience. This is top-notch. It produces highly effective PD. But we also always discuss that 7-star experience. We ask what would completely transform the session to create something unexpected and surprising. We ask, can we leverage our technology to create something that has never been done before? While this may or may not be possible, the exercise of simply discussing the most innovative experience allows us to land on PD that is definitely effective. In turn, the not applicable column requires that our PD specialists not only tell us why they designed a session a certain way, but also why they did not include an element of the principles intentionally. Intentionality is the crucial piece while designing effective curriculum. So I'm going to go through our rubric right now and tell you all of the pieces that make up a DreamBox professional development session. So all DreamBox sessions must have an introduction that engages the audience, and it also provides an agenda for our audience, especially because we are either on-site or web-based. Everybody needs to know what they're going to do. Our PD must have elements of audience engagement that creates a story or element that creates relevance at the beginning of the session. This will become a common thread that ties the learning together and also helps provide closure at the end. Our modeling must include use cases to make the learning relevant and connected to the teachers, and must give tangible activities for participants to engage in. Our sessions must give our educators time to work on a task that will impact their routines or push them to thinking about shifting their practice in some way. You hear some of those same words from the design principles into our rubric as well. We must also allow time for collaboration. So let me get there. Collaboration and creating a plan for applying their new knowledge during our sessions. The extension activity that we embed into our professional development provides an activity that teachers will participate in after the session that not only applies the learning, but also encourages future collaboration between educators in the group. We don't want teacher professional learning to stop at the end of our session just because we go away from the building. These next two categories, integrating standards for mathematical practice and language that fosters a culture of mathematical thinking, they're applicable specifically to our subject matter and our curriculum. We are a math company. So DreamBox deeply supports and reinforces these two aspects of the student's mathematical journey, as do teachers. So they're key elements in our design. When you're defining your professional development design principles, be sure to keep in mind the overarching goals and content-specific structures that you want and that you need to include in your rubric as well. And then, of course, we must provide closure that connects with the initial introductory activity, question, or problem. We also reinforce the extension activity and make sure that educators can ask all of their questions at this time. In that way, we can receive feedback and they can also receive feedback. So these design elements are broad enough that we can create experiences for any of our content, while also being specific enough to ensure that teachers are receiving a meaningful experience. So just kind of giving you a background on this rubric as well. Here at DreamBox, we've been delivering professional development for years, and it's been wonderful. But as I moved into the manager of adult learning space, I did ask, hey, what are our design principles? And everybody had slightly different answers for that. And so we decided to move forward with making sure that these were clearly defined, they were uniform for the team, and that they understood what we were expecting of our team. We would go into sessions and we would see all of these elements happening, but after the session we were unable to describe exactly what design principles we were touching during which parts of the session. And so, again, I come back to that intentionality of design. When we intentionally designed, we not only made sure to include it, but we also knew exactly why we were doing something and why we were not doing something. Okay. So after we designed the rubric, we also designed a template that our PD specialists would fill in while creating sessions. It's a collaborative effort. We all get together and we figure out what content we need to cover, and then we can all add our ideas into these templates. So the rubrics give the indicators as to the what do I need to design, and the templates give the structure to support the how do I begin collaborating with my teammates to design this session. This is synonymous to lesson designing or lesson planning in a classroom and doing it with a group of teachers intentionally. As our team collaborates, they can add their ideas to each section, which promotes healthy discussion about the optimal design of each part of that session. So another thing we do say here at DreamBox is that we are hard on ideas and soft on people. We have something called benevolent friction, where when we don't agree with something, we talk through it and we listen as if we're wrong, and we listen as if the other person is right, and we speak as if we are wrong. So we make sure that we are open to other ideas, and once we put an idea on paper, we know that that's not personal, it's not connected with who we are as employees and people, but it is an idea out there in the universe, and whether it's picked up or not, we encourage everybody to share what they think and to also scrap what they think as well. There's never a moment where I throw out an idea and it has to be the idea. There's never a moment where I throw out an idea and I think, that's it, and nobody else can have a better idea than I do. So hard on ideas, soft on people is very important. The template here that you see is just the first page to a few pages of this template, and that is available in the resources section of the presentation today, I believe. Great. Any questions, Jenny? Want to come in? Okay, great. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, feel free to throw them in there. We'd love to see them. Again, if you have any of those crazy PD experiences or stories you'd like to share, please feel free to put those in the Q&A, and we'll be checking that throughout the session. All right, so finally, what we had to do for us was make sure that our rubrics and our templates did cover all of the essential design elements of effective professional development. So as we went through, we wanted to make sure that our rubric supported that. So you'll see the little check mark here. Our rubric is content focused. It's based in the DreamBox offerings, which is always focused on our product, our content in mathematics, and supporting teachers in that way. The introduction gives relevance in setting up that case, so we make sure during our introduction that we discuss with the teachers what it is they're here to learn, and we try to really adapt in the moment and adjust and focus on what it is the teachers are there to do. And so within that introduction, we automatically give relevance to the teachers of why they're here and why they should participate in our session. We incorporate active learning into several elements of our sessions, including that audience engagement and the audience work time. And so when we give the audience time to stop and either think through something on their own, make a plan or a vision, or to collaborate with others, which is also coming up next, we give that time to actively learn what's going on, to actively ask questions, and really grapple with the information. We allow time to collaborate during this session, and we're going to talk about groupings at the end, but it's very important to note when you're designing professional development experiences, you need to know who is this meant for and who is in the room, and how do we group them effectively in order to promote and support proper collaboration. In our case, we work with a lot of K-8 teachers, and so we need to make sure, is this best geared toward a certain grade level? Is it best geared toward a certain grade band, the entire school building? Do we want them vertical teaming and collaborating during this meeting, or do we want them grade level teaming? Do we want them content level teaming? Again, we're focused in math, but if we had other content specialists in the room for whatever reason, we would make sure we'd make that applicable to those people as well. So when you're designing professional development, think very carefully about how you are going to support collaboration, not only in what the content is that they're going to collaborate on, but also how you are grouping people and asking them to approach your professional development meeting. Do they sit in table groups? Do they sit in rows for some reason? Whatever that might mean for you. We model effective practice. So I'll give a really solid example here. In our product in DreamBox, we have an online digital math program, and kids grapple with models of mathematics in order to solve problems and critically think about and engage in mathematical problems. So as teachers give students DreamBox to work with in their classrooms, teachers often ask us, what can I do with this amazing product that can help me become a better teacher? And so one of the things that our professional development specialists do that is appropriate to modeling effective practice in our sessions is that we actually show them how to engage in our sessions using the tools that they use every single day in DreamBox. It's called their dashboard, to engage in looking at student data. They can actually say, tomorrow I'm going to be teaching geometry. I always like to use that example. And I need this specific lesson. So they can go in, they can click the Play Lesson tab, they can pull it up on their teacher screen, and they can use that to run a whole class lesson. They can use that to run small intensive group lessons, and they can also use that to do one-on-one collaborations with students. In that way, our professional development specialists come in and they model those conversations and those lessons that teachers can have with students. They model questioning strategies. They model opportunities for students to be able to get up and be the ones to take center stage and take control of their learning and lead the class in that way. So when you're thinking about your professional development, think most deeply not only about modeling what it is you're trying to get them to do theoretically, but also exactly what it is that they're going to do in practice. Make it practical, make it on their level, and make it, again, relevant to what it is they're doing, possibly that next day in their classroom. You'll see that check mark popped up on the top there. We provide coaching and expert support. So all of our teachers all of our specialists are former teachers, so we are experts in our field in the K-8 environment. Many of our teachers are also math-focused teachers, and so it gives that extra level of support where they can engage with and talk about mathematics with teachers on a level that most PD specialists in most companies cannot do. We understand their goals, we understand their challenges, we understand their schedules and what they're dealing with in the classroom. So in that way, we can provide expert support and coaching. We also have extensions that we give. So if people continue to have questions, oftentimes we have a DreamBox champion on site that can then reach out to our PD specialists with questions. We often make extra videos for clients. We make extra materials just to support them. So you'll want to think in advance, what are some of those questions and challenges your teachers might actually run into that you can then make materials to support them if that comes up? Or that might be a next best session that you can set up during that first session to say, hey, this is something we will be supporting you in. Another piece of this is also the pathway of professional development that you want to create. So if you have your first session, make sure that you're setting your teachers up for understanding what's coming in the next session. You might have questions about this feature in DreamBox, for example, but we let them know, today your focus is to get into DreamBox, and our next session on X date is to make sure that you understand this specific feature. So if you have questions until that session, please feel free to send them, but we will get there. It really calms fears. It really calms stress and nerves about when am I going to learn this? Will this be something coming? So make sure that in that coaching and support that's ongoing, that you always also give a highlight of what's coming and a little early agenda of your timeline throughout the year. All right, built into our professional learning experiences, we offer reflection and time for feedback. So again, we offer that time to stop and think and reflect on what it is they're doing. We offer a lot of time for questions. And after all of our sessions, we do send out surveys and we send out information about can you give us feedback to make us better. Again, we're hard on ideas, soft on people, so we want to make sure that the content and the way in which we deliver the professional development is evolving as our teachers' practices evolve as well. So we give that during the extension activity and in the closure. All right, sustained duration. So again, sometimes some districts buy more professional development from DreamBox than other districts do. So that sustained duration can be a tricky one based on our customer. And again, we are a third-party vendor, so we probably have different challenges than you might have within your buildings. You have all year to plan your PD for your building. We might have 1 or 2 sessions. So depending on the amount of time we have with those teachers, depending on the offerings that they've chosen to receive from us, we set up a really decent plan for them to say, this is where you're starting and this is where you're ending, and this is how we're covering your goals over time. We want to make sure teachers understand where all of that's coming from, when it's coming, and how they're going to be supported. And then we also give them those extension activities to do with their teams, whatever kind of team, again, grouping that might be within their building. And we say, hey, in 1 week from today, for example, you're going to look at this report in our dashboard, and then you're going to do this activity. So then this meeting, this PD session, is now sustained to the next week. It's now rolling into their professional learning community discussions. It's now rolled into possibly their PGE discussions, all of those types of things. So we make sure it's not just 1 hour with DreamBox and they're out. Teachers as professionals. Again, we embedded the appropriate language and aligned our presentation to teacher requirements based in the language that they use, based in the standards that they are trying to meet, and we recognize them as professionals. We also value their feedback when they give it to us, and that really empowers them to say, I'm the expert here, and you are here to support me. And that's what we want for our teachers. We want them to understand that we value them as the experts, we're listening to them, and we can adjust and adapt based on their needs as well. And finally, we are constrained to webinars. We're constrained to individual on-site opportunities. We're not there every day. We generally don't have once-a-week check-ins as well. That's just not how our PD is set up. So yours might be a little bit different. And you might not be constrained by those limitations. So when you're designing your PD, think through other ways by which you can offer professional development. Maybe it's every day in the classroom, it's coaching opportunities, it's peer-to-peer. Maybe you don't have anything to do with some of those PD opportunities. It's colleague to colleague. It's setting up more time. It's doing all of those things as well. Groupings are also an important element. We've talked about this a little bit, but you can have those grade level bands or vertical teams working together. But these decisions are crucial when you're making them intentionally before you provide that PD, so that everybody knows what to expect and who they're working with for that sustained duration. Please keep in mind that whether you're designing your own PD or evaluating a third-party PD, be sure that your rubric indicates your must-haves so you know what's expected. Don't be afraid to ask a third-party PD vendor to look at your rubric and allow that to guide your conversation about what your educators need and expect from their professional development. Don't just trust that the third-party PD knows better than you do. You can also ask the third-party provider if they can supply you with their design principles in advance for consideration. Vetting PD is important to protecting teacher time and resources. It's never outside of the realm to ask if they have those and to ask them to work within your constraints that you've defined. Any questions? All right. The last major piece is that you use this rubric to measure the outcomes of success, not only for your session, but for the impact that the learning created. So as you saw earlier, teachers are wanting to measure outcomes. How did this learning impact my students' learning, and how did it impact my practice overall? So if the goals are to change teacher practice, and the goals are to improve student learning outcomes, then how will you measure success? That's the big question. You may create surveys to poll teachers about the impact. That might become excellent data for you to adjust and adapt moving forward. You might intentionally choose specific student data, like a common assessment of some sort, to measure the outcomes. You'll most likely go into classrooms to observe the impact. I would hope you would be doing observation and coaching. You'd ask questions about how the learning is being applied in the classroom. And you may provide follow-up coaching opportunities that formatively measure success as teachers continue to grow. The end result is not instant, and it may not even end within one given school year, so be sure to be clear about measuring the outcomes so that your educators know what to expect. This also shows your dedication to the importance of the professional development. Here I would also say there is a culture in some school districts of I'm being observed in order to be judged in some way, in order to be classified as a good or bad teacher, in order to have a number assigned to my observation. And again, at DreamBox, the goal of the observation for us would be to assess the effectiveness of the PD, not to assess the effectiveness of the teacher himself or herself or theirself. And so when you go in, make it very clear, we are here to make sure that our professional development is supporting you. We're here to gather information and data about how to best move forward with your PD in the future, not to gauge how you're doing as a teacher and judge you. Again, hard on ideas, soft on people. So there are a few extra elements to keep in mind while designing effective professional development. Ask for input from your educators. They can be part of this design and decision-making process. Again, one of the things that teachers reported in those surveys was that they were actually given top-down professional development most of the time. They weren't asked for their input and then, in turn, did not feel like they were being treated as professionals in the teaching profession. So you can give a needs assessment in the form of a survey. You can go around and talk to teachers. You can have a specific staff meeting to just discuss and maybe give possible options and what they think. But be creative and make sure they know that you're here to support them and you want their input. All right. Define standards for effective professional development. Make sure they're defined in advance so your teachers know what you're looking for, and they can also have input on that rubric before it's completely implemented. So design that rubric. Make sure it's a measure for success as well. Give them that metric up front. Again, teachers want to know what to expect. They don't want to be given that after the fact and saying, hey, I wasn't aware that this is the outcome that we were going to measure. Just like our students, our teachers need that as well. The next four are a little bit trickier because they're a heavier lift in terms of designing effective professional development. So sometimes we may even need to go as far as redesigning school schedules to allow for more collaboration to sustain your professional development. Often teachers say, I need colleagues to come into my room and give me feedback. I need to have coaching opportunities. I need to have that. And our schedules aren't designed that way. So if you are on the cutting edge of professional development and really want to grow teachers, one of the things you might consider is redesigning schedules in order to sustain that model. Along with this, if possible, provide more time, resources, and opportunities for colleagues to coach one another and to watch others practice the new learnings as well. We learn from each other. We learn from mistakes that we make and of others, and from talking through them. At DreamBox, we like to say that we like to fail fast here. And so if it's going to happen, let's do it together and let's move on so we can make that better. It's also been proven that providing incentives is effective to getting teacher buy-in on the front end. So offering to pay teachers to attend the PD and to offer continuing education units may motivate your teachers. This may or may not be possible for you, but it's definitely something to consider when you're looking at budgets for the next school year. Finally, think about the role technology can play in your PD if this is relevant for you. Can you use technology to simplify or clarify the experience for your teachers? Can technology connect people in collaboration when they don't have face-to-face time? Can technology help you track outcomes more regularly to drive change at a faster pace? Maybe everybody has a document that they can put student data into, like a simple Google Doc, that they can actually adjust and look at anytime they have planning time or time to do that, and that would foster an internal conversation much more quickly than just showing up weekly to a meeting with the data in hand. Any questions? Great. All right, finally, there are some common impediments to professional development that need to be considered to ensure that this PD is effective. So often teachers are given PD that seems exciting and promising, and they're really encouraged and motivated to do it, but they don't receive the adequate resources to execute on the experience in their classrooms. One way in which we see this with DreamBox specifically is teachers love DreamBox. They get in there, they start playing, we have a training, they're ready to go, and they get into their classrooms and suddenly they're not given the amount of computers they were promised. They only have 4 instead of the 8 to 10 they were promised, so they could do 3 small groups during their math rotations. And so it kind of takes the wind out of their sails, and it unmotivates them, right? Other things that we see is that the tech isn't totally set up, or their kids haven't been completely rostered yet. All of those tiny things are really important, so make sure walking into PD that they have all of the resources that they need and everything's been done for them so they can start right away and hit the ground running. The PD may not align with current school or district policy as well. This is definitely a large impediment. So the PD may be the right thing to do for learning and the evolution of teaching, but it may be against the guiding principles of the school and the district itself. So leadership needs to keep an eye on that alignment and must be willing to make changes as needed to support best practices in education. This one's a hard one to swallow. Sometimes we feel like it's out of our control, but as leaders, we need to be the voice of reason and the voice of change in our districts and make sure that our policy aligns with best practices and that it continues to evolve as well. All right. If the professional development is designed to support collaboration and collective growth in schools, then a dysfunctional school culture, including unresponsive leadership, including staff members who don't get along for whatever reason, all of those things can derail any opportunity for professional development in the school. So for dysfunctional school culture, some of the things you can do in advance to be proactive instead of reactive could be sending out surveys to get a pulse on what's going on. Again, going to classrooms, sitting in on team meetings, talking to your teachers and your students more about what they're seeing and making an intentional plan to move forward to shift that culture before you try to embed content-specific professional development in your schools. Also, the professional development needs to have responsive leadership. So if you're one of those leaders who's extremely responsive, but you are not the principal of the school, or you have other associate principals who aren't on board or unresponsive, you want to make sure as a leadership team you are together and you're leading the charge in a way that everybody understands, and again, it's intentional. Everybody needs to be supportive and buy into the plan before it's rolled out to your teachers. Ignoring the context of learning, whether that be the reasons identified for gaps in learning in your school, the policies guiding the school's decisions, the curriculum, the core curriculum that is enforced in the classrooms, or what teachers want to focus on, or that culture, that will impede the overall effectiveness of your professional development. So don't ignore the context of learning going on in your school. It's not the same for everybody, so be sure to have your finger on that pulse in your school. All right, and as you think carefully about the impediments and being intentional about all of that, I also want to provide you with a list of resources. So these are websites, books, organizations that our DreamBox team uses frequently to discuss and continue researching effective practices for delivering professional development and presentations to our clients. So these resources are available as a PDF in the resources section as well. So you can download these, you can take them with you. Learning Forward organization, the Learning Policy Institute, and also the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has a lot of great research as well. We go to those sites often to read their updated research, the surveys they're giving, and all of the articles that they submit on effective professional development. And we have conversations about those to evolve our practice here at DreamBox as well. Made to Stick, Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die. This is a wonderful book. It's a fairly easy read. It's very straightforward. It's made to stick, really. And it talks about the simplicity in the message that you're providing, again, using those small, manageable chunks so that teachers don't get overwhelmed by information. That's a really great read. The 4 O'Clock Faculty, A Rogue Guide to Revolutionizing Professional Development. This one really thinks outside the box in terms of what have we done traditionally and what can we do now? Can we leverage technology? Can we call professional development something that we haven't called it before? Does it have to be everybody sitting in a room and doing it all at the same time? Or can it be personalized and individualized? Can it be within just one group of people at a time in your building? That's a really great read. You should pick that one up as well. Results Coaching, this one actually supports our research into continuing education as teachers as well. This one would be a great read for teachers. How do we not only coach each other, but we can also apply these strategies to our students as well. And then The Art of Coaching, Effective Strategies for School Transformation. So again, it's more geared toward the leaders, but your teachers would be really excited and interested to have these resources themselves. Because again, you're treating them as professionals, you're kind of letting them in on that ground floor, and they can give you ideas toward what seems to be working for them and what doesn't. So, to recap, our key takeaways from today are ask for input from the educators who will receive the PD, define the principles that are non-negotiable to your PD, design based on your specific content and desired outcomes, be prepared to measure those outcomes in a constructive process, and redesign as you measure your results in order to adjust appropriately and sustain development over long periods of time. Don't be afraid to redesign and adjust. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you, Stephanie. I know there's a lot of great content here. I hope everyone's having as many aha moments and takeaways as I am. We've had a few questions come in, and if you haven't submitted yours yet, please feel free to do so now. So here's one. It sounds like building a growth mindset is really an important component to an effective professional development in school or district culture. What are some ways that you can help change that mindset in a practical way?
Absolutely. That's a great question. We talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset here all the time at DreamBox Learning. Oftentimes, it's really having that fierce conversation with your staff about not only defining what fixed mindset versus growth mindset is and delivering the message of why it's an important thing, but also having real fierce conversations about what the culture is in your school, what is fixed, what have we found on a tangible level that is a fixed mindset in our school, what are some of the practices that we still engage in that are not geared toward a growth mindset, and being open and honest about that conversation. Again, hard on the policy and the ideas, soft on the people. So some people are stuck in that traditional mindset, which is fine. There is a lot of benefit to the learning that we can gain there. But if we want to promote that growth mindset, we first have to dispel the myth that we can't talk about the fixed mindset. We have to talk about what it is, have that fierce conversation, and then move forward. Another thing we also discuss here is that once you have appropriately had that conversation, started to drive change, it's okay to enforce that change in your schools. Be sure that you're giving constructive feedback to professionals in your building who are not following that growth mindset, who are not following those models, and have those conversations with them. It's promoting growth in your school, but that actually promotes more healthy culture, that you are going to be a straight shooter and have those fierce conversations so other people in your school don't need to.
That's really great feedback. And in that light, you also kind of talked about, you're trying to achieve desired outcomes as you're designing for PD. So what are some ways that you can set and create goals together? And do you see that as kind of a collaborative process, or is that really on leadership?
That's a great question. I'll start with the end of the question first and work backwards. So when we walk into a meeting or a situation where we are trying to design for an outcome or a goal, I do have a desired goal or outcome or multiple desired goals or outcomes in mind. I don't immediately share those. So I want to be prepared for myself to help guide the group, at least get to a desired outcome that I believe is going to make the team and the process and the PD more effective and better for everybody. However, again, we walk into those meetings with one idea, and my number one goal in a meeting is to have my mind changed. So I don't present those up front. For me, it's very collaborative. What are our goals? We do discuss them. We want to make sure everybody buys into them. Even if we disagree with them, we have a thing called disagree and commit. So we can agree and commit or disagree and commit, and we make sure that everybody's on board. So I would say in that situation, if you are designing this rubric and you have desired outcomes, that would be a collaboration in my mind, but you would, as a leader, walk in with something in mind so you're well prepared. But please be prepared to have your mind changed, because so many great ideas get thrown at the wall, and your spaghetti might stick, but their spaghetti tastes better.
That's wonderful. So in terms of data, a lot of districts are collecting a variety of types of data from many different sources. Okay. So do you have some recommendations for what district or school leaders can do to kind of take certain data points to drive those PD sessions or topics or ideas?
Absolutely. One thing I would do with your staff first is define data within your school. Data is a big word right now. It kind of encompasses everything for everybody. I gave this vocabulary quiz today, that's a point of data for me. Well, I gave this project, that's a point of data for me. Data, while important, not all of it is extremely relevant. So what I would do first is define data within your school. What are we going to gear our conversations toward moving forward in terms of what data is actually relevant and what data is something that is important in the moment so we can personalize and adjust and differentiate for kids right then and there. But in the long term, it's not a data point that's going to make or break their education. So that's what I would do first. Secondly, walking into a professional development session, if you have the rubric and the template in mind, you do also need to tie in what is it we're going to specifically do with students to measure this? Is it going to be this common summative assessment, X? If that's the case, make sure that that is designed and developed before you get there. Maybe you access the curriculum that teachers are already using. In this case, the end of the quarter algebra math test. You've gone in, you've vetted it, you have aligned it with what it is you're doing, and that is going to be one major data point. And then you say all of the quizzes along the way are those smaller data points so we can adjust and continue to understand how we can adapt throughout the quarter so we're not just stagnant in our learning with kids. But it's going to be that one data point at the end. So make sure you do have in mind what are the student outcomes, but what is it that we are going to be gauging that learning by.
I love that. That's some really great feedback. We've got a lot of comments. There's some attendees that love your rubric and are hoping for a PDF. But if we're not able to do that in this kind of location, I'm wondering if you can share some ways that you can take that rubric to make it your own, the one that we presented in the slides.
Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't provide this as a PDF for this session intentionally, go figure, because we did want to show it to you, but we wanted you to have time to go back and ruminate on what it is we did, and then access those effective learning, design principles, and really make those your own. On the top, I can go back and actually access it for you. Let me go back one slide. There we go. On the top, we give you the not applicable, the expectations met. You can certainly use that for yours, and you can use some of these other categories in the left-hand column for yours as well. But we really wanted to get you to start thinking about what am I intentionally designing for? Not just taking another piece from another vendor and making it your own, but truly starting from ground zero and intentionally designing something that would fit with your staff. And so that's the whole reason we didn't actually put this in the PDF today, was because we wanted to encourage you to engage in that conversation. A rubric is a wonderful way. We tried to actually design this in so many different ways prior to the rubric, and the rubric was twofold. It gave us our expectations, and it gave us a way by which to measure the outcome, and so it was definitely the right avenue by which we went about that.
That's great. Well, I wanted to thank you again so much, Stephanie, for all of the great insights and tips and best practices you shared today. And I hope everyone else took away a lot of those aha moments and learnings so that they can drive forward and empower their teachers with personalized and relevant PD. So now I wanted to give the opportunity for all of you still with us to learn a little bit more about DreamBox Learning. So like you, we are really dedicated to improving those learning outcomes for all students. And we know that that comes from empowering educators to more effectively close those learning gaps and facilitate meaningful learning. And to achieve this, together we have to make sure that every student feels supported, is engaged, and believes that they can be successful. And DreamBox Learning is the only K-8 digital math program that's powered by students, built by and for educators, and independently proven to positively impact student achievement. To accelerate the kind of change that leads to the learning gains that we're all looking for as educators, we have to address the needs of our administrators, our teachers, our students, and even our greater learning community. So, the evidence to support the work that DreamBox Learning is doing is also shown in this third-party study, which is completed by the Center for Education Policy and Research by Harvard University. The study demonstrated that students who used DreamBox for 60 minutes a week improved 58% more than the growth norms on the NWEA MAP assessment. While not all schools can allocate 60 minutes a week, schools that use DreamBox for just 20 minutes a week consistently saw that students improved 19% more than growth norms. So in terms of how DreamBox is designed, both during and between lessons, DreamBox is dynamically adapting and differentiating in real time based not only on student answers, but based on how they are solving those problems. By automatically and continually supporting all students at their just right level, DreamBox has become a powerful partner in every classroom, school, and district. And through their learning pathways in the DreamBox curriculum, students are developing deep conceptual understanding through sense-making and exploration. In their pathways, they work through the concepts and lessons that are designed to help them find that structure to show that they understand mathematical relationships. And finally, at the end of those learning pathways, we're ensuring that students are developing the procedural skills and fluency that's needed to understand how to apply those procedures and algorithms strategically. And as mentioned earlier, DreamBox is powered by students and also built by and for educators. So we provide a lot of actionable reporting and tools that empower classroom differentiation for all learners, while simultaneously giving teachers content-specific professional development that's relevant to the math their students are learning, which also gives administrators the insights they need to know how all students are progressing. And finally, we're partnering with teachers and parents and learning guardians to facilitate a strong connection. This powerful combination gives teachers the confidence and support that they need to make those best instructional decisions for every student, while also giving administrators the insights they need to positively impact student learning outcomes across the district. As you've heard today, research and publications from many leading organizations, such as the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and Learning Forward, have suggested that when educators have a deeper understanding of the math concepts they're teaching, their students have a higher achievement. So with Flex PD, districts and schools receive a personalized professional development plan that's aligned to instructional goals and district goals. Our PD focuses on helping educators deepen their knowledge of the math content, and it also increases the efficacy of their instructional practice in the classroom right away so that they can better meet the needs of each individual student. And Stephanie mentioned earlier MyFlex PD, which we also embed into the Insight dashboard for the teacher, which gives teachers access to data-driven professional development modules immediately available within DreamBox, so that they can immediately deepen their understanding of math content in ways that are directly related to their students' specific learning challenges. And finally, there's a lot of really great information on our website at dreambox.com/white-papers. There's a lot more you can learn about DreamBox, or if you're just looking for some tools to increase your knowledge about a variety of topics, including some best practices for evaluating digital curriculum. If you wanted to learn a little bit more about MyFlex PD and some of the research that was done behind that in partnership with the Gates Foundation, there's a white paper there as well. So we hope you will go there and find those tools helpful. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.
All right. Well, thank you, Jenny. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have left today. So as we wrap up, I want to thank Stefani Kauppila for her excellent presentation, and also Jenny Lee for her product insights. I'd also like to thank DreamBox Learning for its support today. And one final reminder, we will be sending out an email to everyone when the recording of the webinar is ready. Thank you, and this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.